Hey, Steve.
How are you?
I had the opportunity to impress me. I'm going to start with the Parshas Bereshit, or as our teacher says, Bereshis, which I still can't get used to saying it in the Ashkenaz way or the Sephardic way, but I try. We're going to start with Adam. As you know, we started Bereshit with a homage to the Kabbalistic approach to it. Now, all of my classes for this year will not be so Kabbalistically centric, but I will attempt to bring sort of a higher level of understanding spiritually about these texts, and I find it important. So we're going to first talk. We know up to this point, Adam and Eve are created. We talked about how creation is a top down approach to bringing divine essence and light of Hashem to the physical realm of creation. And that Sinai was the embodiment of that same type of creative information and binah, the wisdom that starts from Sinai up, that elevates humanity up. And so the whole idea is we were created to bring these two together. And we're going to look at some really particularly good information about Adam, the origin of sin. We're going to go back to the idea of dealing with Joe was talking about, the light. And Sandy mentioned it as a question or a comment Sunday that is it possible that it says that when we die, when the end comes, and after the millennial reign, that we'll return back to Gan Eden? Does that mean that it says? And I think, what verse, Sandy, did you quote? Do you remember the verse you quoted? The the end is found in the beginning, or something like that.
Isaiah, let me see if I wrote it down somewhere. No, it's Isaiah something. I guess I didn't write it down, but I'll find it again.
Okay. Well, when you find it, let me know, and just break in whenever you find it. Um, so the idea is that in the end we return to Gan Eden, and I believe by understanding what the Kabbalah says about Adam and Eve and the creation, those little nuances, we're going to understand that those are the things that will need to be corrected, and that what we'll move back into. So you're going to get a vision or an idea of what it's going to be like when we go back to the original, what we're going to be constructed of, what it's going to look like. So it says that it's interesting because Adam and Eve were of a different light. And we remember this, they were without skin. Joe mentioned this the other day, that God gave them skin. And the skin that we have on us today is what Hashem clothed us in, because without that, Adam and Eve were pure light. As a matter of fact, the Adam and Eve that Steve touched on last night were heavenly beings before the fall. They were divine beings. They were at a different level. Their bodies, or whatever you want to call it, their form was of a divine nature. They were at a totally different place. And so after the fall is when when they're sort of cast out of the garden, they are put into this world of physicality as we know it today. And it's important to kind of understand that. And that garment that he had, this garment of light, in is surrounded by this great light. Now, what is this great light? It says that the snake, Hasatan, a Nachash, had the snake didn't have that ability. He had no portion in that divine light. In accordance to the secret meaning of the verse in Genesis 3:1, it says, and the snake was naked. You saw that? What was he naked for? Is he naked like Adam and Eve? What did it mean? No, this was before the fall. The snake did not have that divine light. It was not made of the the light of Hashem. And it says that therefore the snake conspired against Adam to cause him to fall and to lose his garment of light. Find that interesting. Never read that before. It says Adam sinned with the tree. Adam sinned with the tree of knowledge, which is the word of Asiya. Of this he was commanded to eat from. He had no portion. Satan had no portion in the tree of knowledge. And it says that the tree of knowledge was only in the world of that higher level of dimensional, original creation. Does that make sense? This original creation was a whole nother dimensional spiritual world, and it's called Asiya. This tree of knowledge was only in that place, but by Adam's sin, the klipot are now mixed together with holiness. That is the klipot of failure, of the fall, the klipot of the hardness and difficulty of physicality, as we talked about last night, the cursing of the ground, etc. This klipot, however, the Yitzhara, descended, dressed into this higher dimension, and also began to be called the tree of knowledge. And we're going to talk about the fact that this highest level of the tree of knowledge is available to us, but we're going to find out how it's available to us. Rabbi Chaim writes this. He says, the sin of Adam with the tree of knowledge of good and evil was that he did not take from the tree of life, which is the wisdom of Kabbalah, the wisdom of Torah. So the sin was that he did not first taste the wisdom of Kabbalah or Torah. He took it for granted. He took it for granted because this great light that existed in this highest level of creation, where the creation of physicality and light itself, the daylight, the dark, the sun, moon, and stars, all of that emanated from that highest level. You guys follow me? Shake your head. No, yes. I want to make sure that you're following. And it says that this is the same sin of the mixed multitude that said to Moshe, you speak to us the Torah. Let us hear it from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Do not let Elohim speak with us, lest we die to the secrets of Torah. When God spoke at Sinai, he was speaking of those highest levels of light and wisdom, and it struck them with the highest level of fear, because it was as if their brain, their development, their spiritual development was not able to process it. It would be like trying to feed a child, a baby, hamburger meat. You just wouldn't do it. Their bodies aren't able to process it. They need parade food or whatever. So this being the sin of the mixed multitude, they request, you remember at Sinai, don't do that, we're going to die. It says that they died like 3 times, and when the word of Hashem came forward, there's the vibration in the soil and the air. They could see the Hebrew words written in the very firmament, just completely. As a matter of fact, as the words emanated from the creator of the universe, it was as if creation was starting all over again. The words of Hashem that he speaks from the Torah, the Hebrew language, brings things into existence. And this is why, and this is an offshoot, but we have to understand that even today, as low as we are in physicality, our words that we speak create. Now, we can create negative or we can create positive. We can create things that elevate us, or we can create words that bring us down and creates calamity in our life. This is why all of us who are driven to a higher level of righteousness and purity before Hashem, that we struggle to make sure that we stay pure in our speech, that we don't do negative things, we don't think negatively. As much as I try to help myself not to do that. The other day, I was doing some work for a client, and they sent me some photos. And as soon as I saw the photos posted up, I kind of had one of those roll your eye moments. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but silly and ridiculous. Like, why would you post this about yourself up on your website? It's egotistical, right? That is what hit my mind. I started to utter it, and I went, what in the world are you doing? You shouldn't even be thinking that. Does that make sense? And I was like, I had to stop and like ask Hashem, you've got to help like warn me before I even think it. I don't even know how that's supposed to happen, but I don't want to even think that kind of stuff. Why? Because there is power in the words that we speak. And we also understand that the Torah that we speak and we study creates new things and fresh things in our life. And it's so important to understand this. So, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or let's say this, the tree of life that Moses brought down from Sinai was shattered. Do you remember the first Torah, the first tablets that came down? That was, at its truest sense, the highest level of Kabbalah. This was, as I said, the sin of the mixed multitude. They weren't ready for it. And that was shattered. When Moses threw the tablets down, it was shattered. And so instead, they received the Torah from the knowledge of good and evil. And according to Kabbalah, which is the Mishnah, the idea that the Mishnah, the oral Torah, is not the highest level, but it's the next level down. Because at the highest level, most people probably couldn't even stand under its purity and its goodness. This is the cause of the destruction, actually, of both of the temples. What was the cause? Is the speech that was being uttered, the hatred that was being uttered, the lack of knowledge of wisdom. They lost their wisdom, therefore they lost their temple, which is a scary thing. This idea comes from Etz Chaim, chapter 2, section A. Now, Adam Rishon was forced to leave the Garden of Eden for having eaten from the knowledge of good and evil. The reason why good and evil was bad was not that it was not supposed to be consumed, but before you get into the knowledge of good and evil, you need to know the highest level of wisdom. You need to understand the highest level of wisdom that comes from Hashem. Well, we discovered last Sunday night that highest level was immediately masked or concealed by Hashem. When it said that he separated, you remember the light from darkness? That's when it was concealed. Adam Rishon was forced to leave the Garden of Eden, as we said, and Adam was on a higher level than even the tribes are today. That's after what happened. They were at the highest level than all of the people of Israel today. And at that time, the creation of the worlds were on a level that nowadays exists only on Shabbat. Why Shabbat is so important? Because it is on Shabbat that Hashem, what we call, garnishes a time for all mankind to enter into a special place, that it's out of time and space, in which the essence of peace and shalom comes into a house. And the highest level, that's why Torah learning on Shabbat is so important, that we gain the most essence from it. God revealed to Adam and Eve a book given to them in the Garden of Eden by the angel of secrets. This book contained the knowledge concerning the 72 divine names that revealed the formation of 670 inscriptions of higher mysteries that we now can explore through Kabbalah. In the middle of the book was the secret writing explaining 1,500 keys to the universe, which weren't even revealed to the angels. Now it says, according to this source, when Adam and Eve got this book, all the angels gathered around to read it. When the reading began, the angels exalted Adam and Eve as if they were the Holy One, blessed be he. Whereupon the angels, which his name is affable, we can't really pronounce, was sent to them saying, Adam and Eve, do not reveal the glory of your master, for to you alone and not the angels is the privilege given of these things. God intended for mankind to have these secrets. He intended for us to be able to know these secrets. But because Adam chose the lower level, that's what Hashem gave him, was the lower level. You remember, we talked about free choice. God gave Adam and Eve free choice, and surely if he didn't mean them to make it, they wouldn't have made it. It says that if it wasn't for that choice, we wouldn't need creation as we have it today. We wouldn't need physicality as we have it today. We would all be birthed into this place of universal knowledge, which is the highest knowledge. Even the angels wanted to know it. Now, when Adam and Eve got this book, it said after they made this statement and the main angel said, don't utter these things, don't make these mysteries known. When Adam and Eve transgressed, it said that the master of the universe, it says that when they made this transgression, the book flew away from them. Now, Joe, you mentioned metaphors. Not literally that there was a book with dust on it and a leather cover. We know that. This is about this great wisdom that Hashem gave Adam and Eve. And when they chose to eat of this tree, not that the tree was forbidden, period, but that it was left for later. It wasn't meant to be consumed immediately. It was supposed to be wisdom that they were supposed to consume. So when they chose this, they were given the lower level. Now, interesting story that I've never heard before, and I'll share this. It says Adam was so distressed by the fact that the book left. We've heard this reference before. It says that Adam, when the holy light, when he existed in that highest level, both he and Eve, especially him for the longest time, when he existed at that level, he could see from one end of the universe to the other, which meant that he was one in mind with the creator of the universe. He knew everything. He understood everything. Very much like where we're going to return to. When the end of age takes place and we return to Gan Eden, we will enter into a place like Garden of Eden with the wisdom that Adam had from the beginning. And what grants us that ability, both Jew and non-Jew, is do you embrace even the lowest level of wisdom? And I say, and not my opinion, but the opinion of the great masters of Torah, that those people who engage, righteous people who engage in the study of Torah, also have access to this wisdom. We also have access to this. Now, do we want to limit ourselves? Yesterday, Mary Lou, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning this, but she said a dear friend of hers, she mentioned the person's name, and I know that they were involved in Christian ministry together, and they've obviously separated. And this person really doesn't want to have anything to do with Mary Lou. And Mary Lou wrote her a letter, hadn't spoken to her a while, and just like, hey, I want you to know I still love you and respect you. And I sure hate that we don't have a friendship and a relationship like we used to. And the person reminded her, well, it's really difficult to have a relationship with somebody that, how's the word go, thinks too much? No, is not satisfied with what you study? How's it go?
She should only do heart knowledge, not head knowledge.
Head knowledge, right?
She shouldn't have any head knowledge. She should only have heart knowledge.
Right. So the whole idea is you think too much, you have head knowledge, you're just wanting to get more knowledge, and it's not about heart, because if you had the heart knowledge, you would settle on JC. You get the point, right? So this idea is that this book was so important to Adam. He realized what he missed. It said that he entered into Gihon, a river called Gihon, which is one of the rivers of the garden, up to his neck. And he stayed there in protest so long that he just became wrinkled like a prune, and his face was haggard. And it said that therefore God made a sign to the archangel Raphael to return the book, which Adam studied for the rest of his life. Actually, Adam and Eve. He left it to his son Seth, and it went through generations to Abraham, and it is still hidden today. How do you think that Melchizedek knew what he knew? How did Abraham learn from Melchizedek and from Noah? He learned these higher levels of wisdom. Now we also know that higher levels of wisdom only transforms the student. It never transforms a society. It only transforms and gives that student the higher level. Ultimately, hopefully, it would transform a society. Now, as we mentioned before, the light, though hidden, remains accessible to all righteous people, not just to Jews, not just to the great chachams of Torah. God made a separation in the illumination of light, that it should not flow or give off light except for the righteous. Now notice when I say the separation of light, we're talking about the beginning when he separated light from darkness. This wasn't the sun. This was a separation between the higher levels of righteousness and purity and the lower levels of creation and humanity. It said that it's not to flow off light except for to the righteous. Those actions draw it down and make it shine. However, the actions of the evil block it, leaving them in darkness. And this itself was the hiding of the light. So if we want to understand the secret of concealment, we've talked about how God concealed the light or concealed that highest level of illumination. Well, it was concealed because of negativity. It was concealed because of evil. And it continues to be even more concealed throughout history. And I would venture to say that in these last 20 to 30 years, we've seen unconcealing of that, because evil is not as prominent as there are righteous people who truly want to do the right thing. And when I say righteous, I'm talking about the giant funnel that Rabbi Wolbe talks about. It starts up here, the broadest level, and goes down to the tip, which is the highest level. Now, it is the goal of every spiritual person who wants to maximize his or her life to discover this holy light. This is why we're here, guys. And how it is to be used for its divine purpose. We're not studying Torah because we're scared to go to hell. We're not studying Torah because we think it makes God happier. We are studying Torah because we know that our study, the world is dependent upon us studying and bringing down and drawing down light. That's obviously what Kabbalah means, is to draw down. The pristine light of the day also belongs to the initial stage of creation. So the light that we see today is at its beginning, at its genesis, as the English word would say, comes from that source. Our awareness of the passing of time, of days and seasons and years, come from the world's movement and rotation. The sun and the stars, God announced, what are they? They're signs. They're made for signs and festivals and days and years. Genesis 1:14. Now, our concept of time belongs to the limits of the created universe. It is a product of movement and change, a result of the world's temporal nature. The second type of light corresponds to the lower holiness that penetrates and fills the world. What I mean is the lower holiness, that means at this base level that the rest of the world can handle, that secondary type of light is where it comes from. The light, the higher transcendent light surrounds the whole world, while the lower emanation of light descends and penetrates all the created worlds. Now, the holiness of Shabbat is set as an eternal, independent of our actions, and yet we are commanded to sanctify it. It says in Exodus 20, verse 8, how can we sanctify? It says, remember the Sabbath day and make it holy. Now, how do we do this? The essence of holiness of the Shabbat is eternal and transcending in time. Now, I want to make a statement here so that no one misinterprets what I'm talking about. I'm not intimating that non-Jews and Noahides need to observe Shabbat or should or are obligated to observe Shabbat any way that the Jews do. However, there is an honoring and revering of God's holy day of rest that he established before and that he gave to the Jewish people. There is a way for us to also receive from that flow of illumination on Shabbat. The Bible's revelation at Sinai came to repair the sin of eating the tree of knowledge. And he says, I've created the evil impulse, and I created the Bible as a remedy for it. So the Torah is the remedy for this impulse toward evil. The Bible reveals the transcendent light of the first day of creation, the light of timeless holiness. Therefore, the first letter of the Ten Commandments begin with Bible's revelation, the Hebrew letter Aleph. God is eternal and all things emanate from him. It says God saw that the light was good and he separated the light from darkness. That is, the light in Hebrew, in original language of the Bible, has a numerical value of, and you've heard this from Steve a lot of times, 613, which is the number of commandments rooted in the Bible. We notice repair, that it's light, and that light is revealed in mitzvahs. Now, God has given us this hidden light. You and I have access to the hidden light, and it's found in the mitzvahs. Stay away from darkness, which is the end of suffering and death, and choose life. That's what the choice was given when they went into Canaan. Choose life or choose death. What do you want? Our goal is to work the light, to work toward the light, to work toward mitzvahs. The only way that we are going to experience and receive the greatness of the highest level of Hashem and his likeness is through the Torah itself. It says, and God said, let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. We talked about the duality last night. And God made the firmament, and dividing the waters which is under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God created the firmament, heaven, and there was an evening, and there was a morning on the second day. God spends 1/6 of his entire creative effort on this second day, working on a solid firmament. The strange structure which God calls heaven is intended to separate the higher waters from the lower waters. Now, on one level, we understand that on the second day of creation, God created the waters and condensation system and called the firmament. Waters turns to vapor, a gas, and rides on the clouds, where it forms into clouds and eventually leads and brings rain to the earth. This is what waters everywhere on the earth do to sustain life on the planet. It is very important. That's what God created on the second day. Now, also, maybe we can bring it up in discussion. This also is how Torah emanates from heaven. It rains upon us. It says that Torah is like the dew. You remember this in Psalms? It's like dew. It's like rain. It's like rivers. We've been seeing this. So, on a deeper level, Ramban suggests that it is a deep mystery that is difficult for the average person to really understand. He does also suggest, however, the best way to understand what happens on the second day of creation is that God separated the physical world, what we can see and experience by our five senses, from the spiritual world, which is beyond our direct ability to comprehend. He separated those things. So the firmament is actually the spiritual world. Do you get it? When we think of firmament, what do we think? Clouds, sky, the moon, the space. That's not the firmament. The firmament is actually the spiritual world. He separated them. Now, with that separation, the spiritual world, that we can reach out and, as I said, study the Torah and do the commandments. So we have the ability to enter into the firmament that God created. The Bible teaches that the heavens and the earth were created on the first day of creation. From the time being, we will put aside this, what the heavens are and what the earth is, and what a day is in its context. But let's focus for a moment on the fact that the heavens and the earth have been created as one day. Heaven, or given that the heavens and the earth have already been created, it's kind of puzzling to read this statement on day 2, which implies that God separated the heavens from the earth on day 2, and then goes on to say the firmament separated between the waters above and the waters below. Why does the Bible seem to repeat this creation of the firmament, which divides between the heaven and earth? It is created once on one day, and then mentioned more specifically on day 2. Now, if you go to Rashi's commentary, he quotes the Midrash, which explains the apparent repetition. He states that the firmament has been created on the first day, which the firmament is the spiritual level that we can access, but was somehow unstable. In the book of Job 26, verse 11, he goes on to say that day 1, the firmament is described as if the very pillars of heaven were weak. Interesting comment. The Midrash explains that when God says on day 2, let there be a firmament, this commandment was experienced as an awesome roar. It was as if the firmament became awestruck, like a person who is shocked and stands still from the roar of one who threatens them. As if the Bible was describing 3 phases to the creation of the firmament. Its creation, its experience of becoming awestruck by the roar of the Almighty, and its ultimate stabilization. Here's another perspective, and I found this equation interesting coming from Kabbalah. The basic formula for photosynthesis is this, and I'm quoting it not because I'm that smart, but because I read it. Okay, so I just want you to know I'm not a scientist nor whatever you call it. So 6 CO2 plus 12 HO2 plus sunlight, and then we have 6 HO1 and 12 O6 plus 6 HO2 and 6 O2, evaluation 1. It says these 3 input components of photosynthesis, light, water, and carbon dioxide, correspond to the 3 basic components of creation, as highlighted in Kabbalah: light, water, and firmament. Maim, Richa. The firmament is the element which separates godliness from the lower world, or firmament from the water. You following? The relationship between these 3 things is figuratively depicted in the Aleph Bet, or the letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which comprises of the upper point, light, and the lower point, water, and the diagonal line separating them from the firmament. This was how the Aleph looks, with the line between them, and there's a separation between the firmament, which is the higher level of spirituality, and the lowest level of physicality. Hence, it could be said that photosynthesis manages the interaction between the divine energy of the world. This is the expressed both by the descent of carbon dioxide and oxygen atoms into carbohydrates, the source of sweetness in the world. I find it interesting that all of these concepts that help us to understand spirituality and the highest level of contact with the master of the universe is actually found in science, etc. Now, this connection between the upper and lower realms finds its most noticeable expression in the Zohar, refers to as a union of the upper and lower waters. According to the commentary of Ashmoret Haboker in the Zohar, this union represents the unification of Torah knowledge, which is the higher wisdom, the firmament, and worldly knowledge, which is lower wisdom. There is wisdom in the world, but it's considered lower wisdom, or the wisdom of the nations. The hour that best reflects. Sorry, the rubbish bin is being emptied. The garbage man sends them to the moon. Sorry about that. It's embarrassing. Can you still hear it? It's going to be all over the place. Anyway, let's start back. The hour that best reflects this coming together, upper and lower realms, is that of the third meal on Shabbat. If you remember, there's a third meal on Shabbat. And this third meal on Shabbat happens in the afternoon. Most messianic character makes it cognitive to contemplating the significance of the planet. This is found within the text and the symbol of Messiah. The Zohar states that God looked into the Torah, which existed before time, and created the universe. The divine act of creation is referred to by the metaphor of speech. Amer, root, which is the root word to speak or to say. It's an acronym for the first three primary creations of light, water, and firmament. These represent the three stages in the materialization of the creative seed, as taught in another text. I want to go down. We're running out of time. I want to add this as it's closing. I've got so much here. Sorry, guys. Let me go on down. Oh boy. Let me just mention this. This is too much to get into. This is probably text that would last me 3 hours to do. But I'm going to give you these little jewels, and then I want you to go in and do some research on it. The Aleph Bet, the Hebrew Aleph Bet, is like the periodic table of elements. The written Torah, it has in it only the crowns of the letters and the letters, and it has none of the vowels written in it. Thus, the word of Torah have many possible meanings. This does not mean that there is not a known simple meaning which Moses taught from God at Sinai. But let us know that there are other secret meanings in its words. The letters are the 288 sparks of the vessels that shattered. The vessels that shattered, obviously, God, when he created Adam, he was one. He was one soul. And that after the fall, they were fragmented into many different souls. So that's kind of an understanding. By shattering the vessel spark falling below. So it is the Torah and the eventual regathering of sparks that we become unified at the end of days. We return to a place of complete unity with God, just like Adam was in the beginning. So Adam, being this creature of light, was in a whole other level of existence. I really wish that I had time to get into the detail, but I want to leave time for a little chat and talk. There's just so much here. Maybe we can kind of cover a little bit as you ask questions. I want to open up the floor for question and answers. Who would like to go first? Comments, questions, fears, doubts, unbeliefs?
Okay, I've been thinking about eating from the tree of good and evil and eating from the tree of life. And correct me if I misunderstood what you were saying. After they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then Hashem says, okay, they have become like Echad. And I was reading in the commentary, just as he is unique in the celestial world, the spiritual world, now man is unique in the terrestrial world because now he knows good and evil. So that places him really above the animals.
Right.
So therefore he can't live, he can't eat from the tree of life because he would live forever and he would just have this idea of just following sensual pleasures and all that. So I guess my question is, if he had did they sin because the order in which they ate? If he had eaten from the tree of life first, then he would have had this knowledge. So then when he did eat from the tree of good and evil and he learned good and evil, he would have the tools from the tree of life to know how to deal with that good and evil.
Precisely.
Okay.
That is exactly what it is. And this was the problem, is that Adam and his descendants were the containers of that wisdom, according to Kabbalah, after the fall, because he was able to study it and pass it on to his generations. This is why the rest of humanity went the way they went. They followed after the knowledge of good and evil, which to them, they found evil good. So they did what was evil in their eyes. They did what was good in their eyes, actually. Does that make sense? And so Torah is the elixir to resolve that issue. It's to bring us back to that place. Now, we now know how to balance ourselves because we have that wisdom. And I would even say that in the postmodern world, people live sort of Torah-centric lives not because they know it, but because they know morality that's been sort of infused in our society. They know even some levels of spirituality that's been infused by generations of people that have sought levels of purity. So I think Joe had to go. Sorry, Joe, you had to go. So that's a good observation. I like that, Sandy. Very good.
Can you also understand the fact that both the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life were actually the same tree?
Mm-hmm.
It was the choice of fruit that really set this thing apart, is the fact that they desired to know, and the first thing that they know is each other.
Right.
But the real answer was that they really should have known life first before knowing each other, and that was part of what Christianity calls sin.
Right.
The sin is choice. What choice did you make, and how did you react to that choice?
That's absolutely right. I'm glad you brought up this idea. Had this discussion the other day that's in Christianity, sin is like a complete and utter rebellion and failure. In Judaism, it's missing the mark. That's a big difference between those two concepts. I mean, even Hashem in Cain killing his brother said, it's at the door. You make the right decision, you do the right thing, everything will be fine. You'll be fine. I mean, that was murder, for crying out loud, which means that our sin, our missing the mark, is just about choice. It's just about choice. And the thing is, if we weren't intended to, quote, miss the mark, he wouldn't have given us the choice. So it was the great experiment. This is the most amazing thing that I find. God creates man. He gives them free choice in the garden, Adam and Eve. They choose to have the knowledge of good and evil first above the knowledge of life. Life is Torah, right? King David says that. It is life. So they chose that, and that's what they got. And instead, now, I know that in Christian religion, I don't know about in Islam, but in Christian religion, that was the original sin, and everybody after that was in sin. Everybody else took that sin upon them. But no, what it meant is that Adam and Eve made a free choice. And in that free choice, he assigned his generations to live in that choice. Your choices have consequences. And the consequences of that was ultimately the destruction of the world by water. It's an incredible idea. But you're absolutely right. I like that, Steve. Karen?
Okay, so if the fruit came off, both fruits came off of the same tree, then that means that there wasn't a difference between them. How did they know the difference? Unless intent matters in everything.
That's true.
Intent matters, which, I mean, there's the saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So how do you balance the two? Because I mean, I can have good intent and come out with an evil consequence.
Correct. So if your good intent is not filtered through the knowledge of life or Torah, let's just say life, the tree of life is the tree of wisdom and Torah, okay? If that part of the wisdom, if that fruit is not picked and eaten first, then that other thing that you consume could be detrimental. And you're right. I think there are a lot of people who, in their choice, that's what free choice is. It's eating of life or eating of death. This is what was quoted in the Torah with Moses at Sinai. Choose. It's your choice. It's both there. It's both available to you. But you choose life, you're going to choose the right thing. And I don't think it means that you choose life without the knowledge. It means that life and wisdom gives you the ability to know what to do with the knowledge. Remember, the knowledge is good and evil. So it is life that ultimately brings good results. It's the lack of life or the lack of knowledge, the lack of wisdom that brings death. Doesn't mean you immediately die. You just eventually you wither up spiritually and you lose your connection with God. Did I explain that okay, Karen?
Simply said, true life is connection to Hashem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way. I think we get confused all these metaphoric ideas of trees and fruit and was it an apple, was it a fig? None of that's germane to any of this. This is about the highest level of spirituality and Adam given a choice. Do you want to live in this world of Shemaim, or do you want to live in the lower world of the firmament, or the waters? Where do you want to live? That's good, Karen. Anything else?
Just a quick comment, and that we never seem to get past the first 2 chapters, but
Right.
this is actually a long parsha that includes so very much. And the lesson that I think I'm learning from it this year is that everything, including genealogy, is important.
Absolutely. And let me add this too. I was actually considering maybe doing another. I might Sunday night continue on and finish up what I've studied because it's way too valuable. I mean, what we've unlocked here is knowledge that we kind of maybe knew in the back of our head. Now we're connecting the dots. Steve?
I don't remember what I was thinking when I started this whole idea, but I want you to go back and reflect on the creation of the Torah itself.
Mm-hmm.
The first Torah was actually made of black fire on white fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the text, you get this simple understanding of what black and white is all about.
This is going to be good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, now if you take the if you take the first letter of the alphabet, the first letter of the Torah, you have a bet.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the Bible is actually white, not black.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that first letter and you outline it in white, you get another letter. And the letter that you gain is the letter pay. Mouth, your words. So from the very beginning, our understanding has to be the words that we're choosing. The discussion that went on in the garden between the serpent, between the serpent and Hava was a discussion in which the words became very important. In other words, was she looking at the literal understanding, or was she imagining what was going on? Which led Adam, who was sitting there, as Sandy pointed out to me a couple weeks ago, Adam sat there to listen to all of the discussions. Now, originally I thought that Adam tried to rescue Eve by eating of the fruit. Had nothing to do with that. He was
Right.
interested in what she was interested in. He wanted to know what she knew.
So it
And
was the
so he
woman's
gave up.
fault.
Pardon?
It was the woman's fault. No.
That's exactly what I thought.
Anyway,
especially
that's
after
not your
Sandy.
conclusion. Go ahead.
No, I think the idea is the fact that when we go through, now that you're going into the heavier stuff, into the Kabbalah, I
Mhm.
am totally excited. In fact, you actually had probably 12 hours worth of work right there that I've been doing for 17 years.
Yeah, but I don't like working that hard.
Well, I don't either, but it really pays off in the end, doesn't it? Because
It
you
does.
now have a different understanding of texts.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, but as you go through this whole thing, generations, which is what Karen was talking about, it's the passing on of knowledge,
Hmm.
the words,
Hmm.
all the way through. Everything is about passing on something
Hmm.
as we go through. We call it heritage.
Hmm.
The Bible calls it heritage also, but what is our heritage? What is it that we're passing on? And so from the very beginning, God developed light, he developed consciousness.
Hmm.
Our question is, where do we want to focus our conscience?
Hmm.
Where is it that we're working? What is our language that we're going to use? And that's really a lot of what the Torah is telling us.
Right. That's absolutely it. And it's interesting that we have to read and look at this text at its deepest meaning to pull the simplicity of what God's purpose is. Because when it's written in plain sight, as it is, or what's written in plain sight, it is cloaked. It is not revealed in the open. One of the biggest discussions I've had with atheists is if God is real, then why in the world would he create the world like that and then hide all of this quote big truth and big wisdom and not give it to us? That's awful cruel, right? But that comes from someone who's living in complete physicality. They have no concept of the higher level. That's good, Steve. You have something else? Go ahead.
Well, the idea is there's 4 levels of understanding in the Torah.
Right.
Most of us live at what's called Peshat, the
Right.
simplest level. We don't want to go far, because
Right.
if we go far, we have to honor what we now know and deal
Right.
with it.
Right.
The second level that you go through is the level that's called remez. It's the hints that are in the scriptures.
Hmm.
The third level is drosh. Now you're threshing through the scriptures and you're
Right.
really digging for what's there. And the fourth level is the level of sod, the secrets.
Hmm.
What you've done today is you went from peshat to sod, and we're still trying to catch up with your hints and with your threshings. But
Well,
it's,
and I think
tough.
that's why it's important, at least on this text of Genesis, that I do expand it to next Sunday. And the reason why is that means three glances at this text and expansion of it so that we can fully understand. Look, I have to be honest with you. When I got into all of the etymology and the words that are used in Hebrew to try to figure out what they are in English, and this idea of the upper world, because if you read the Zohar, the words that are used don't give you any hint to what it is. They just don't. I mean, they use a Hebrew word, and if you don't go back and find out what the word means, and if you don't go back and find out what it means in the context of Torah, you're just reading words when it says, and Adam came from this, and Eve came from this, and then when Adam sinned, they went to this place, and you're like, what is those places? What is that? And so I think next Sunday, we're going to tackle those things, and so that we can understand that when we read these letters or read these words in the Zohar, we take the mystery out of them by translating what it is. And that's what I'm hoping to do. Karen and then Sandy.
This is Malachi. Did you just ask what the purpose of God is?
I don't think I did. Did I say
I
that?
think he was trying to express what atheists ask.
Oh yeah. Atheists like, why would there, why does there need to be a God, and why is there a God that would do this? That's what atheists say. That's why they don't believe in a God.
Okay.
Very very good, Malachi. I thought you caught me in a faux pas. Appreciate it. That's my Malachi. But questions are important. That's how you avoid stupidity. Sandy.
Okay, I'm needing a little help understanding how it was one tree. I've never heard that before, and so that's fascinating.
I'm going to turn that over to Steve.
Okay, well, here's my question. So I'm confused on it. Genesis 2:16 and 17. Let me just read it. Bear with me till I find it again. And Hashem, God, commanded upon the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may surely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, or actually the word is evil, but it's translated bad, you shall not eat of it. Okay, so right there, Hashem specifically called it the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then in 3:3, let me find that. The serpent says to the woman, what he said, and she said, the woman said to the serpent, of the tree of the fruit of any tree of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree that is in the center of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it. She didn't call it the tree of knowledge of good and evil. She just called it the tree that's in the center of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 3:22, go to that one. And Hashem, God said, indeed, man has become like the unique one among us to know good and bad. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, he will eat. So there, Hashem, I think that's the first time we see it called the tree of, or a reference to the tree of life. So just reading those verses, I'm confused how we get that that's one tree. I don't know if I'm asking the question.
No, your
not.
question is perfect.
Yeah,
The answer is, where was the tree of life and where was the tree of good and evil? And if you notice, they're both placed in the center of the garden. The rabbis then will refer from this the fact that there are trees that have multiple types of fruit. We've created hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
The original tree of life and the original tree of knowledge of good and evil were the same tree. It's the fruit that's on the tree. Which fruit looked better to you? Notice how the serpent frames it. What do you think of how it looks?
Mm-hmm.
Does it look good to you? Well, again, I go back to my Jacob and Rachel and Leah. Jacob got to choose two beautiful women, but one was more beautiful than the other. In other words, one was more attractive. That was the one that he wanted. The one God really wanted him to have was Leah. Leah is the one that's buried with him in Machpelah. In other words, as we go through things, we have choices. Now, normally we would think of a choice as being right or left, but this one is a choice that's dead center. Both of them are right at the same spot. And so as he's looking at this, now you're glancing through the tree and you're trying to decide which fruit you actually do want, because that becomes significant. I don't know if I really answered your question, but go ahead. I think
just kind of a follow-up. Okay, I get that putting the two verses together where Hashem says you can't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then Eve repeats it and says we can't eat of the tree that's in the center of the garden. Okay, I can deduce that she's talking about the same tree, but where do we get the what's the basis for that the tree of life was in the center of the garden?
that's in the Zohar.
Oh.
I'm stealing from Rabbi Shimon's Bar Yochai. I think Rashi talks about it also, but I know in the Zohar, that's why I came to the understanding that both trees were exactly in the same place, that it was actually two fruits on the same tree. You
We
choose which
also,
fruit you want.
we also need to make sure that we are placing our understanding in what we just talked about, that this tree per se existed. They're not trees. They are metaphorically trees in the sense that you go to that for sustenance. You go for that for life, for knowledge, for your body, etc. Now we get that in physicality. We have trees today that we can get shade from. We have trees. We get carbon dioxide. You just go through the whole oxygen. I'm sorry. You have trees you pick fruit of, and if certain fruit heals certain things in your body, that's the physicality that points us to what they were dealing. But it wasn't a physical tree in that place because it's a completely different world of light. Is it?
Well, it's in Yetzirah. It's not on the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah,
That's
correct.
that's what you're talking
And I'm
about.
going to mention that. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, Sunday. That's very good. Ross, go ahead.
Okay, it's I don't know. It's difficult to explain, but on the one hand, it's like we use these metaphor, these trees, garden, and such. It's ideas that we can relate in physicality, so that we can make the metaphorical point. If you were simply just talking in metaphorical language, it doesn't really have a shape or a form. So we use the terms tree, garden, and so forth to give it some substance, if you will, so that we can grasp it with our thoughts in our mind. And to me, what it's saying is, here you have a choice between life and death, good and evil. And I think I've expressed this before, what you will encounter in your future depends on how you speak now. If your words are good and your thoughts are good, you will most likely have a fairly pleasant future.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to speak evil and do evil, you can be assured that you will reap the rewards of that.
Right.
It's the same thing as the blessings and curses. Whatever behavior you express, you will reap the rewards of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Something kind of smacked me in the forehead, and I'm not really sure. I just want to throw it out there, and I need to maybe get you guys get some feedback. And Steve, when you mentioned about it being one tree but two fruits, but that's actually choice. It's choice. The tree is choice. It's free choice. We got to remember, you might as well say, and there is one free choice. There's one choice. You have the ability to choose. It's in the center of your life. It's the very center of existence in Shemaim or on physicality. What you choose brings you life or brings you knowledge that could kill you. So,
May I say this?
yes, go ahead.
You are that tree. What fruit will you bear, good or evil?
Well,
Man is a tree of the field.
right. Tree of the field. I thought you were calling me a fruit for a minute, Ross, and I was going to come over and get in a fight with you, but no. This has been great discussion, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate the input. Peggy, Mike, Karen, Malachi. All right, Karen, is Malachi the only one that's with you right now? Or is there others? I guess she had to go. Ross, go ahead.
Malachi's been the one listening to class today. Toby was too tired.
Okay, I get it. He's a teenager. Ross, go ahead.
I just forgot to lower my hand. That's all.
Oh, okay. Guys, I love you. You're amazing people. We start Shabbat in for 20 something hours. So be well. and have a great day. Also, if you guys that take Hebrew, there's going to be some possible shifting of some classes around. I'm trying to see if I can go to Thursday, but I find out Thursday's talking about moving to Sunday, and then Richard mentioned about why don't we take everybody from Sunday to Thursday. So I don't know. So I'm just letting you know that that's in the works. And also, Richard is talking, he's going to make little short highlight videos from the lessons that we learn and do little thoughts like from Bereshit, we're going to examine chapter 2, verse 3 through 1 or whatever, whatever it is. And he's going to do little 12-minute videos to put up so that we can also promote the Hebrew class, and they'll be very instructional to be on YouTube. So, okay, guys, see you later. Have a wonderful, safe weekend, and may it be elevated with plenty of light from Hashem, okay? We'll see you guys later. Shalom, shalom.